The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. When Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of King Herod, behold, Magi from the east arrived in Jerusalem, saying, "Where is the newborn King of the Jews? We saw his star at its rising and have come to do him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was greatly troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Assembling all the chief priests and the scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. They said to him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it has been written through the prophet. And you, Bethlehem, land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, since from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod called the Magi secretly and ascertained from them the time of the star's appearance. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search diligently for the child. When you have found him, bring me word that I too may go and do him homage." After their audience with the king, they set out. And behold, the star that they had seen at its rising preceded them, until it came and stopped over the place where the child was. They were overjoyed at seeing the star, and on entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother. They prostrated themselves and did him homage. Then they opened their treasures and offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed for their country by another way. The Gospel of the Lord. Last month, we sent a postcard to everyone in the parish with our plans for Christmas this year. And there was a lot of information we wanted to communicate on that postcard. We had extra mass times. There was the whole thing about tickets and then a live stream. And so this parish staff went through several drafts of this postcard to try to figure out the best design. And at one point, I had what I thought was a brilliant idea. Let's put a QR code on the postcard, I said. That way, it will lead people to our website where they can get all the information they need. Now, you know what a QR code is, right? This is a QR code. It's one of those square box barcodes that you scan with the phone app, on the camera app on your phone, and it leads you to a website. They have these in restaurants so you can get the menu, or they have it at museums so you can learn more about what you're looking at. And so I thought this would be great to include one of these on the postcard. Well, when I suggested this, the whole parish staff laughed at me. "Okay, Father Matt, you're so old-fashioned. You know, QR codes, that's like 2010 technology. Who uses that anymore?" And it was like I had suggested using MySpace or dial-up internet or some other technology that went out of date decades ago. Well, I said, I use QR codes all the time. I can't be the only one. "I think you might be," said Chris, our new communications director, with a look that made me think like he didn't want to tell me how much of a relic his boss was. Well, I bet that people laughed at the three wise men as well from the east. "Okay, Caspar, Melchior, and Balthazar, you think you're so smart? You're still studying the stars? You're looking up for messages in the heavens? Who does that anymore? You're so old-fashioned. You're such a relic. Don't you know that we are modern Romans now, that we have the latest, greatest technology like wax tablets and papyrus to write messages down on, that we have roads for messengers to travel on? Who still sends messages by the stars? Yeah, we know there's a new star up there, but don't worry about it. Who cares about a new king? We have a king, Caesar, King Herod. Those are the important people we should be paying attention to. Don't go to Bethlehem. Rome, Jerusalem, that's where the real power on earth lies." It's interesting that the popular wisdom of the day is never quite as wise as people think it is. And sometimes it's the real wise men who are made fun of and ridiculed and called old-fashioned by some wise guys who think they know better. But those wise men knew that they were preserving something very important. They were passing down a tradition that had come down from them from the ages, an ancient wisdom about how to read messages in the stars. They knew that God often had a lot to communicate, like where and when a Savior would be born, what he would look like, how to find him, what gifts to bring him. And sure, God could write all that out on a papyrus somewhere, and probably did, but it was a lot easier to put it up in a star, up in the heavens, so that you could look at the star in one glance, and if you knew how to read it, you would know exactly what God was trying to say. You see, a star is a lot like a QR code. It's very useful. It gives you all the information you need in one glance. It leads you right where you need to go, and only the wisest people use it. It's very, very good. Now, those wise men followed that star, as we know, and it led them somewhere that all that technology, all that wisdom that people thought they had could never have led them. You know, wise men also know that the latest, greatest technology isn't necessarily better. It might be neat, but it doesn't necessarily make us more wise. In fact, scientists tell us that much of our technology makes us less wise. Our minds are devolving in the modern technological age because, like any muscle that you don't exercise, if you don't exercise your brain, it's going to atrophy. Why would your brain do all the hard work of remembering things and retaining information if you can just take your phone out anytime you want and look it up on Google? Who needs that if you exercise the brain? Up in Alaska, the Inuit have for thousands of years hunted walrus out in the Arctic wilderness. And for thousands of years, there's this wisdom about how to hunt the walrus that was passed down generation to generation, father to son. Things like about the tides and the shifts in the ice fields and the migration patterns of the walrus. And it wasn't written down anywhere. People just instinctively knew it. It was a wisdom. Then some wise guy had the bright idea of introducing GPS technology to the Inuit. If it's so dangerous to go out there and in those ice fields and hunt, maybe we should give them the latest technology to help them. Well, within years of receiving GPS technology, the young Inuit began to disappear in snowstorms at an alarming rate. They began to fall into crevasses. They couldn't find where the walrus were because they were no longer operating out of this received wisdom. They were just blindly following this technology. They were using it as a crutch. And soon, they forgot how to hunt the walrus. And within a generation, that art of walrus hunting disappeared. Who needs GPS when you have a star? Those wise men followed that star through the wilderness, a long and winding journey, right through the clutches of King Herod. And do you know where that star led them at the end of their hunt? It led them right to the same place my QR code would have led everyone if we had allowed it. It would have led to a place where you could come and worship a newborn king, where you could come and celebrate his birth, where you could come and offer your gifts to him and kneel down and worship. They found at the stable in Bethlehem what they were looking for. And they began to realize there in the stable that it isn't in royal palaces of Rome or Jerusalem or Washington, D.C. that real power is found. It isn't in the headquarters of Google or Facebook or Apple that true wisdom is to be found. Rather, where Jesus is, that is where true power is. That is where true wisdom is. And he wants to share all of that power and wisdom and love with us. We don't need to go anywhere exotic. Right here in Exeter, like the little old town of Bethlehem, Jesus is with us. He is born again in our midst. And how many people don't know that? In our modern technological age in which so many things that used to be passed down through the generations, we've forgotten. People don't even know. Sometimes you feel like you're starting from scratch. How do I even begin to explain the wonders that God has done? I feel like I need to start by explaining who God is and how he created the world and how Adam and Eve messed things up. And then God prepared the way for his son, and he was born on Christmas, and he taught us so many things, and he came to die for us and rise again. He founded the church. And then there's the Eucharist. I don't even know how to begin explaining that. And of course, we have to try to explain all of that. We have to be ready to give a reason for the hope that is within us. We have to be able to explain our faith to others. It's just that it's a lot of information. It's hard to fit that all on a postcard. And so it can be more effective, especially at the beginning, especially in our modern technological age in which people worship the image and worship quick information, if you can turn yourself into a little QR code, a little star, a light, so that when people look at you in one glance they say, oh, I get it. That's what God's love is like. That's where I need to go. Someone recently was asking me, have you ever gotten a hug from Deacon Eric? And I said, no, I try to stay 6 feet away from him at all times. And this person said, oh, it's like getting a hug from Jesus. Sometimes a simple hug, a simple smile, a simple act of kindness, a simple manger scene can communicate far more about God's love for us than all the words written down in the world and all the technology could ever communicate. You see, when God wanted to send his message into the world, he sent us. He chose us to deliver that message. That's what Jesus says. You are the light of the world. Let your light shine before others, that they may see the good that you do and give glory to God. Or as St. Paul puts it, make yourself innocent and blameless, children of God beyond reproach in the midst of a wicked and depraved generation among which you shine like the stars in the night sky. I received a lot of Christmas cards this year. And, these days, a lot of families will send these Christmas letters that give lengthy updates on what everyone is doing in the family. And I always like to get those letters. I read them because I want to find out what everyone is doing. But the Christmas card I loved the most this year was this one. It had a long Christmas letter, but at the very end, I couldn't believe it, was a QR code. And this QR code led you to an album where they had all the family pictures for the year. And there was this beautiful family, all happy and smiling. And I immediately brought this letter into Chris's office and said, see, I told you, we should have used a QR code. Look at how effective and beautiful this ancient technology can be. Those wise men could never have dreamed what they would see when they followed that star, what they would find at the end of their journey. They found a picture so beautiful that it couldn't be put into words. An infant wrapped in swaddling clothes, a mother laying her baby in a manger. In the face of such a perfect picture of God's love, all they could do is what we do: kneel down and worship.